and run an entrepreneurship program for high school students called LaunchX. My students come from around the US and world to start companies during the summer at a few top universities. And I have the pleasure of working with some really amazing students. The students often ask me how they can get a career path similar to mine. MIT, Harvard Business School, and starting a successful company. Well, there's no magical formula, even though I wish there were. But I'll share some stories and some of my lessons from along my journey that hopefully can help. I'll start with a story from my freshman year at MIT. I stumbled across a major where you could dream something up and be holding it in your hands a few hours later. Mechanical engineering. I was sold. I know that might not sound exciting these days, but 3D printing wasn't yet mainstream, so bear with me. I explored my interest in mechanical engineering in a class called 2000, How and Why Machines Work. And it was open to any undergrad or grad student and allowed us to learn hands-on how machines were conceived, developed, and used. We got to take apart machines like a Furby, which was this cool toy. Some of you might have heard of it, a little robot thing. And it was really fascinating because all these intricate functions were all run off of one motor. Yeah, I'm showing my nerd card here. We also had this group project where we built this nano Etch-a-Sketch. And I ended up on a team of all freshmen, which I'll remind you was in a class that any undergrad or grad student could take. We had a check-in for the project partway through with the professor, and our project was a disaster, vibrating on his desk as he asked what we were going to do to fix it. This is where most of the other teams went back to the equation for answers. And that's what we're usually taught. That's what experience tells us to do. Go back to the equation for answers. So what I did instead was to ask why the equation failed us in the first place. And I put a penny on our device to get it to stop vibrating, and to see which direction our equation was off by, and to start to understand how it fit into all the different other components at play. And that worked. Our next device was almost exactly what we needed, and we only needed one iteration beyond that. In fact, our group ended up beating the fewest iterations. We ended up winning the overall competition in every single subdimension, all as the underdog freshman team. So this leads me to my first lesson, and what allowed us to be what was really the value here. Ask why. So this might have been an obvious lesson because the class's title was How and Why Machines Work. And now there's a famous Simon Sinek talk in his book that Start With Why. And actually I imagine a lot of you in this class are pros at asking this, especially if I were to ask your parents or educators. So I'll push a level deeper. What maybe is more important than just asking why is asking about the right things. So why was it that this freshman team was able to triumph? There were a lot of more experienced mechanical engineers in the class and grad students. So why was it that we were able to triumph? So maybe what's more important here is my next lesson. Experience is overrated. When we rely too much on experience, we rely on the status quo perspective. When we work too much just to build experience, we often blindly check off boxes without really understanding why things work or how they fit into a bigger picture. We blindly check off each grade of school just to get to a good college, to get a good grade. We check off standard operating procedure on the job. We blindly put things into an equation just to get the answer. In fact, success or experience doesn't even predict success. A recent HBR article said that hiring managers tend to screen for experience, but an investigation of 81 studies shows that actual performance evaluations and retention show no correlation to past experience. I was surprised to see that. You would think that having past experience in something would actually show some kind of performance difference. That's not the case. Hirers just expect that past performance to be a proxy to things that they actually care about, like the knowledge or skills or traits. So, as a potential employee, if experience doesn't really matter, what are those real right skills or traits to be building? So before I answer that question, I want to tell a story from when I was at Harvard Business School. When I was at Harvard Business School, we learned using the case study method. The case study method is where you read a few pages of a case about a dilemma that a protagonist is facing. And then you have to come to class prepared to argue what he or she should do. The first few weeks of doing this was agonizing. I always wanted more information. So I'd come into class saying, it depends. But my grade depended on class participation. So I had to make a decision. And that ended up being a blessing. So as I forced myself to make a decision for my specific reasons, I'd come into class prepared to argue. And some of my classmates would agree with me, sometimes for similar reasons, sometimes for different. And others would adamantly oppose. And it was really inspiring to see these 90 brilliant peers all interpreting the same information a little bit differently. And at the end of the class, our professor wouldn't tell us who was right. But that was actually really comforting. There was no right answer. After a while, though, you would see some patterns emerge. Some people would give a little bit more the social impact perspective, or maybe a little bit more of a capitalist perspective. And that was actually a little bit comforting. That's what you could hope for. Alignment of your perspectives and decisions that make sense for you or for your company. And that gave me comfort as an aspiring entrepreneur. All this time I'd been looking for having the right answer, afraid of making the wrong moves. And this freed me from having that burden. I was finally able to act. This was the last piece of building this kind of entrepreneurial mindset. Because the entrepreneurial mindset summed up really is taking initiative, problem solving, reflectively learning, working in the absence of perfect information, but setting a goal and working tirelessly to achieve it, regardless of those external circumstances. And it's building that internal drive to be able to work tirelessly to be able to achieve something. And building this kind of entrepreneurial mindset is really the number one thing that you can do to set yourself up for success. That internal drive, that you're doing things for yourself. And while I call it the entrepreneurial mindset, it really does apply to any field. It's taking that accountability and control for your own destiny in any capacity. So you might see now why I deferred that earlier question of building the right skills or traits, because there is no one right answer. And it's more of a mindset. So I have some tips for being able to build that mindset. So first, it's about playing to your specific strengths. And I know that might sound cheesy and corny, but success really does span all different personalities and skills. And you might have a few specific success stereotypes that come to mind and the larger-than-life personalities that surround them. I know the first job that I had out of undergrad was working for GE. And if you wanted to be a successful CEO, you wanted to be like Neutron Jack Welch. But what allows people like that to be successful is the same thing that allowed my business school classmates to be successful and compelling in their arguments. It's being true to themselves and believing in what they say. There is no one mold of success. Being success comes from being confident. And it's what really trips people up is ever when they fall back on insecurities for trying to be something they're not. So the best way to be confident is really playing to your success and being authentic. Next is challenging yourself to take action. Whether it's challenging myself to take action of speaking up in class with that limited information, or just pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone in other capacity. Because doing something is better than doing nothing. And when you find yourself getting stuck, sometimes just ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen? And then actually answer that question. A lot of people think of entrepreneurs as risk takers, but I tend to disagree a bit. Entrepreneurs are calculated risk takers who often realize that the downside isn't that bad and that there's a lot of potential upside. Next is looking at your list of activities and to-dos and trying to filter through what things are on there because you really care about them and what things you think you should be doing. And trying to cut out the things that you really don't care about, the resume colors. And I know a lot of you in the room are probably skeptical and are like, oh, well, I really need to do those things. I need to get into college, to be able to get that bright future. But here's what I'm going to challenge you on with that. If you're not enjoying the journey, will you really enjoy the destination? Because right now, if it's just to build towards something bigger, you might not enjoy that something bigger. And also, as someone who's been a part of those admissions committees, reviewing the applications, you can usually see through these two different columns of the people who really care about it and the ones who are doing it just to try to get in. And then what's even more important, try to set aside more of the time for doing the things that you really care about. Entrepreneurs, remove the excuses, remove the barriers. So free up the time, find the resources, figure out ways to just dive in and do it. Remove the excuses. And next, as you challenge yourself and do more of the things you enjoy, set aside time to reflect. It's important to learn from both successes and failures. A lot of people are hard on themselves and are a bit critical. They try to reflect way more on their failures, but it has been shown that you learn extremely well from both successes and failures. So try not to be too critical of yourself. I know that's easier said than done, but it's also important to consider the efforts instead of just the results. This is, if you've seen some of the work on growth mindset, it's making sure to look at the results. So just like that engineering equation, there's a lot of factors that go into the result. Reward the effort along the way. And all of this builds up to the goal of building the entrepreneurial mindset and building that internal drive. It allows you to be confident, to take initiative, problem solve, and act decisively. It frees you from the external validation and doing it for you. I know that there was a long time for me growing up that I had to separate out whether I was doing things because it felt good to be able to get the accomplishment and recognition versus actually enjoying it. And as you go through this checklist and play to your strengths and challenge yourself, it allows you to build that internal drive, and that's where a lot of the real success comes from. And as you build this drive, it allows an entrepreneur or you to be able to clear any hurdle in pursuit of a vision. I know earlier I said when we rely on experience, we rely on status quo perspective. I started an education business having no background in education. I was able to create something different and innovative exactly because I didn't have a background in that. Of course, I had my reservations and doubts. It was scary. But I had built that internal drive and mindset that allowed me to push through and be successful. Even though that first year in particular was really tough. But it was the same things that allowed me to be successful as a freshman in that group of people in that mechanical engineering class. It's that internal drive, the initiative, the problem solving, the capacity for learning and growth. So in a world that's changing faster than ever, with almost 40% of today's jobs that aren't expected to exist by 2030, and with technology driving that, the best way to prepare isn't just experience. So as you learn to code and apply to colleges, choose your majors, apply for internships and jobs, start companies, build your entrepreneurial mindset, build that internal drive by asking why, challenging yourself, and continuously learning.